Welcome to Astrology of the Unknown,
a true crime astrology podcast.
I'm your host, Joseph Mulholland.
And I'm your other host, William Holloway.
And today we are going to cover the bizarre disappearance of Branson Perry. I didn't know much about this story going into it. And William, you suggested it. What was it that made you want to cover this story?
Well, it's just such a bizarre case. And we talked about maybe in the last podcast about the strangeness of when someone just disappears, like they're there 1 minute and then the next minute they're not. And this is one of those cases. But the other reason is because the location where this case took place is in a town with a very small population and has been very, very small, like in a couple hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there have been at least 3 pretty large, significant crimes that have happened here. So that's also just a very odd thing. So I said, this seems like the kind of case that we should cover.
Yeah. Well, let's just jump right in. So we're going to head into a tiny town in Northwest Missouri with a population of only a few hundred people. The place is Skidmore, Missouri, and it's a quiet kind of rural community where everyone knows everyone. You would think this obscure middle of nowhere town would be light on action, but over the last almost 50 years, this little town has become associated with some of the strangest and most disturbing crimes in America. So today, we're going to look at the mysterious disappearance of 20-year-old Branson Perry. But to understand why this case captured so much attention, we first need to understand the strange history of Skidmore itself. Because Branson's disappearance wasn't the first tragedy to haunt the town, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. Back in 1981, Skidmore was already making headlines because of a man named Ken McElroy. McElroy had earned a reputation as the town bully. He had been accused of numerous crimes over the years, including theft, attempted murder, sexual assault, child molestation, arson, and animal cruelty. So this guy was a real winner.
Yeah.
Despite countless allegations, he repeatedly avoided serious consequences, and many residents lived in fear of him. On July 10th, 1981, McElroy was shot and killed as he sat with his wife, Trina, in his pickup truck on Skidmore's main street. He was struck by bullets from at least 2 different firearms in front of a crowd of people estimated as numbering between 30 and 46. Despite the many witnesses, nobody came forward to say who shot him, and as of 2026, no one has been charged in connection with McElroy's death. The story of the town bully and the silence surrounding his death became one of the most famous examples of vigilante justice in American history. And I do remember hearing about that. I think some other true crime murder podcast covered this.
And I think, and I think there was a movie too. There might have been a couple with this either based on or about this case.
Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to talk about the bizarre disappearance of Branson Perry. Branson Kane Perry was born in 1981 and grew up in Skidmore, Missouri. He graduated from Nottoway Holt High School in 1999 and worked various jobs after graduation, including roofing and helping maintain a traveling petting zoo. He held a black belt in Hapkido, a Korean martial art, and he also enjoyed weightlifting. So we are first going to focus on Saturday, April 7th, 2001. 4 days before he disappeared, Branson visited his neighbor, James Bierman, who was about a decade older than him. According to Branson's own account later given to his father, something happened that deeply disturbed him. Branson reportedly believed he had been drugged. He later told his father that while under the influence, he danced around naked, shaved his pubic hair, and engaged in sexual activity with beermen. Who among us hasn't, you know?
Right.
Uh, I don't always shave my pubes, but when I do, I'm always under the influence of something. So, yeah.
Yeah. Right? Exactly.
Um, yeah. When he regained his senses, Branson reportedly felt humiliated and believed he had been taken advantage of. His father, Bob Perry, was furious, not because of his son's sexuality, which he already knew about, but because he believed Branson had been exploited. But there are some questions that do remain. Was Branson actually drugged? Was the encounter consensual? Did Branson confront Bierman afterward? Did anyone else know about what had happened? Those questions have never really fully been answered. So now we're going to focus on April 8th through the 10th of 2001. Branson was reportedly upset and embarrassed after this incident. Several sources suggest tension lingering during those days. His father was in the hospital, and Branson was preparing for his return home. And so I guess maybe like, did he go to the hospital to tell his dad that this had happened to him?
I'm thinking they must have spoken on the phone, or he might have. Well, I think he was visiting his dad pretty often, so
Yeah,
he might have told him in person.
gotcha. So investigators would later wonder whether whatever happened on April 7th set in motion the events that followed. So on Wednesday morning, April 11th, 2001, Branson woke up in the house he shared with his father at 304 West Oak Street. Bob Perry had been in the hospital and was expected home within a few days, so Branson invited his friend Jenna Crawford to help clean the house. Outside, two men had come over to replace the alternator in Bob's car. The scene seemed perfectly ordinary. Inside, there was Branson, Jenna, cleaning supplies. Outside, there were the two mechanics and a partially repaired car. Sometime before 3 p.m., Branson grabbed something from a cabinet in the kitchen and left the house for a short time before returning. In the time he was gone, Jenna claimed she saw one of the mechanics looking through the same kitchen cabinet. When she asked what he was doing, he allegedly brushed it off and went back outside. Branson never explained what he had taken or where he had gone. It's also not known what the mechanic was looking for in that same cabinet. So around 3 p.m., not long after Branson returned home, Jenna took a shower, which was on the second floor of the house facing the right side of the property. Through a window in the bathroom, Jenna saw Branson walking towards the backyard. She shouted out to him, asking where he was going. He told her that he was taking a pair of jumper cables out back to the shed. He proceeded towards the shed before disappearing from Jenna's view. Branson Perry was never seen again. On April 12th, Branson's grandmother, Joanne Stinnett, stopped by the house. Something immediately struck her as wrong. The house was unlocked and deserted. She then contacted Branson's mother, Rebecca Clino, who, as it turns out, had been trying to reach Branson as well. It wasn't until April 17th that Bob Perry was released from the hospital several days later than expected. He and Branson's mother officially reported him missing. Searches began throughout the area. They searched fields, farm ponds, abandoned buildings, old wells, nothing. Perhaps the strangest physical clue in the entire case involves the jumper cables. Investigators initially could not find them in the shed, but roughly 2 weeks later, they were suddenly discovered just inside the door of that same shed. Had investigators simply missed them, or had someone returned later and placed them there? Nobody knows. So, in the spring of 2001, Branson had reportedly begun experimenting with drugs. Friends later told investigators that he used marijuana and amphetamines, and a family member reported that he had a bottle of Valium with him on the day that he disappeared. Investigators also looked into rumors that he owed money to dealers, although they never found evidence to support those claims. According to later accounts, Branson had begun associating with people in St. Joseph and spending time around a house located about a mile east of Quitman, Missouri, a place law enforcement and locals knew is a spot where drugs were bought and sold. Over the years, investigators received tips that Branson had actually been seen there after leaving his home on April 11th, 2001. If those sightings were accurate, it would mean that Branson survived long enough to leave Skidmore and travel several miles away, raising the possibility that the famous quote unquote jumper cable story was only the beginning of his final moments. Less than a week after Branson disappeared, and before anyone had officially reported him missing, the drug house burned to the ground. By the time authorities arrived, the structure was completely destroyed. Former Nottoway County deputy and later sheriff Darren White recalled that there had been a great deal of activity at the house, but by the time of the fire, everyone had seemingly abandoned it. White has since stated that he believes that Branson may have been murdered inside the house and that the subsequent fire destroyed any physical evidence that might have existed. He said, "That's the best theory, that he was murdered in that house and that ultimately, when the house was destroyed by fire, any possible evidence that might have been there would have been destroyed in the fire." 2 years later, on April 10th, 2003, law enforcement arrested Jack Wayne Rogers, a 59-year-old Presbyterian minister and Boy Scout leader. Rogers was arrested on charges of first-degree assault and practicing medicine without a license after removing a transgender woman's genitals in a makeshift gender reassignment surgery at a hotel in Columbia, Missouri. That is wild. While investigating Rogers' personal belongings, detectives discovered child pornography on his computer, tales old as time, as well as evidence of various posts made on message boards under the names Buggerbutt, Oh Hail Satan, and
Oh,
Extreme Body Mods, describing the graphic torture and assault of multiple men. In his posts, Rogers also discussed cannibalizing the genitals of men he had castrated. He sounds like a very interesting dinner guest.
yeah.
Among these posts was a firsthand account of Rogers picking up a blonde male hitchhiker, then doing something to him that rhymes with raping, torturing, mutilating, and murdering him. In an online post, it was claimed that the man's body was buried in a remote area of the Ozarks. Despite this, Rogers denied ever seeing Perry or knowing him and asserted that the post made was fabricated and purely fantasy. Law enforcement, however, suspected the man in question was actually Perry. While performing a subsequent search of Rogers' property, a turtle claw necklace resembling one owned by Perry was discovered in one of his vehicles. In 2004, Rogers was convicted and sentenced to 17 years in prison for assault and 7 years for performing illegal surgery, as well as 30 years for child pornography charges, which would run concurrent with 2 former charges. So he got almost double the amount of time for child pornography than he did for actually assaulting people,
Yeah.
which is crazy. I mean, like,
It's crazy.
that's crazy. I mean, like, I think he should have gotten 30 years for each thing he did, to be perfectly honest with you.
Seriously.
Uh, at his sentencing, Perry's mother begged for Rogers to reveal his whereabouts, but Rogers denied being involved in the disappearance. His earliest release date is October 30th, 2028, when he will be 83 years old. After attending the sentencing, Perry's mother stated she no longer felt Rogers was responsible for her son's disappearance. She said, and I quote, "The police are not completely ruling him out. The investigation has turned towards Skidmore again. They have received new leads there. I suppose time has a way of unraveling secrets. I believe someone in the area knows what happened to Branson. In my heart, I don't believe this suspect is responsible. Despite the nightmare I lived through at his sentencing, I am grateful that someone with that much evil will never walk the streets again." In 2004, Branson's father, Bob Perry, died without learning whatever happened to his son. That same year, Branson's cousin, Bobby Joe Stinnett, was murdered in another crime that brought national attention to Skidmore. Bobby Joe was a 23-year-old pregnant woman who was murdered by Lisa Marie Montgomery, a 36-year-old woman who had been faking a pregnancy. She strangled Bobby Joe to death and then cut her unborn child from her uterus 8 months into gestation. Montgomery was arrested the next day, and the baby was returned to the father, and the baby did survive.
Oh, good.
Wild, wild origin story. In 2022, Nottoway County Sheriff Randy Strong announced that investigators had identified a suspect, but more evidence was needed before charges could be filed. The identity of that person has never been publicly revealed. So, what happened to Branson Perry? Did he leave on his own? Was he in the house that burned down? Was he abducted by Jacqueline Rogers? Skidmore has a history of keeping secrets. Is this one of them? Let's take a look at the astrology to see if any of these theories hold. So let's do.
Well, yeah.
So before you get into that, I did just want to say that um, the house fire theory. I mean, if he was burned in the, I mean, like they would have found remains though. Like,
Yeah, from what I understand, they did. I mean, it's possible that, I mean, it really burned to the ground. Like, it is possible that someone could have been in there and completely everything, all of their belonging, all of their person was destroyed. But like
even the
you still
bones,
said, usually there's something, right?
because I mean, like usually when there's a house fire, they're able to identify anybody that was inside. Like they're usually able to identify like people that passed away in fires. So like I'm just I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, it is true that the fire happened before he was even reported missing. And from when the house burned down, everyone had escaped from their understanding. So maybe they weren't even looking for somebody, but again, they would have found something,
Yeah,
you would think.
you would think.
All right, let's look at the chart. The Disappearance of Branson Perry went with April 11th, 2001, 3 p.m., as that was the last sighting or last known
Mhm.
appearance of Branson when his friend saw him walking towards the shed. So this chart has a Leo ascendant. So that represents Branson. So
Mhm.
it's ruled by the sun in Aries, which is in the ninth. That sun is trine Mars in Sagittarius in the fourth, and it's also trine the ascendant and sextile Uranus in the sixth house. So the sun in Aries is Branson. Makes sense. He's young, full of energy. He was athletic. Now we look at the moon, which is a secondary indicator for the victim. And the moon is in Sagittarius in the fourth house, and it is directly opposing Jupiter and Gemini in the 10th house. It's also trine Mercury in Aries in the eighth and sextile Neptune in the sixth house. So Moon and Sag, I feel this just kind of further points to him being adventurous. Maybe he was going on an adventure, definitely a journey. He went somewhere, right? With the Moon opposing Jupiter, it seems like he probably came into contact or went with other adventurers. You know, I say adventurers in quotes, whatever that adventure is. And the moon is approaching Pluto retrograde in Sagittarius after all those trines and nice sextiles. So that to me is saying like there was a good time had by all, connecting with others, and then there's danger in his path. Like there's some kind of dark thing he is approaching.
Okay.
So before we look at the seventh house to look at the possible perpetrator, let's look at the second because, you know, one of the theories is he might have been abducted. So the second house can tell us something about that. Mercury rules the second house, and
Hmm.
Mercury is in the eighth house, trying the moon, sextile Jupiter, sextile Neptune, and square the nodes. So I think that Mercury is very important here.
Okay.
So yeah. Could abduction have been part of this story? I think that's very possible. With, you know, Uranus and Neptune involved, I think, yeah, drugs were probably a part of it as well,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I would say so.
Yeah. I read one thing that was like he had just started using crystal meth like that day. I was like, oh
Oh
no.
God.
I know. Or like that week. You know what I mean? It was like his first time.
I mean, if you
So
if you think about these small towns, I mean, like I grew up in a small town where there was nothing to do, and a lot of kids turn to drugs at some point. So, I mean, it sounds pretty, I don't know. Skidmore, Missouri doesn't sound like a booming metropolis, so I'm sure that there were drugs. I'm sure that there were a lot of drugs around, um,
for
and
sure.
people were looking for something to do. And yeah,
Yeah, and if I don't have them here, maybe I'll put in post production. I'll put pictures up of Skidmore, but it's not the most attractive looking place. Kind of gives gummo vibes.
oh yeah, that's what I was picturing.
Yeah. The seventh house, important in forensic astrology. The seventh house tell us about the perpetrator, if there is one, or if not the perpetrator, the outcome of what happened to the victim. So, seventh house is in Aquarius. It is ruled by Saturn. Saturn is at the top of the chart at 20 degrees Taurus. And it's ruled by that Venus retrograde in the eighth house. And I don't know if I said this already, but Venus retrograde in Aries was super potent at this moment because it is just stationing to go direct. And, Venus retrograde in Aries in the eighth house, I think of like maybe not the healthiest activities to get involved with, and I can't help but feel like let's imagine the 10th house is like the house he went to, right?
Yeah.
So there's like other people there. That's Jupiter in Gemini. So you can think of other young people. And
Hmm.
then Saturn is this authority figure ruled by that Venus retrograde. It's almost like the drug dealer.
Yeah.
And Saturn in Taurus isn't aspecting anything. Its last contact was the moon in Scorpio when Branson was sexually assaulted.
Whoa. Okay.
So is this connected to that? I think it very well could be. And, I tried to find out as much as I could about the neighbor, and I couldn't find much of anything. For whatever reason, maybe that man had an alibi, that something ruled him out somehow.
Hmm.
But then maybe it wasn't him. Maybe it was drugs he got from that guy or stole from that guy or.
Yeah.
And also, Uranus is conjunct the descendant, which, Uranus can be accidents. So, did he accidentally overdose? And then the last thing I want to look at before we look at the fixed stars and asteroids
Yeah.
is Mars. So Mars is in Sagittarius at the bottom of the chart. It's trine the sun, sextile Uranus, which is right under the descendant. And he would, the moon would be moving towards Mars as well. So right after Pluto. So I'm thinking like, could there have been a fight or some kind of violent act? Mars can also be fire. Like, was this, but then again, like you said, wouldn't they have found something?
Well, yeah. I mean, like if if he overdosed or and like they would have found him somewhere. Like they would have in any of these situations. I feel like they would have found him.
Right. Without the astrology, but with the astrology as well, common sense is that it couldn't have been fully an accident because if it was fully an accident, he would have been found somewhere.
Yeah.
Unless he overdosed and whoever he was with decided to get rid of the body.
Yeah.
And he was intentionally discarded.
Yeah.
So let's look at some fixed stars and asteroids. All right, so we'll start with the fixed stars. At 1 Aries conjunct Venus is a fixed star called Curb, and this can bring danger by being abandoned by a lover. So,
Hmm.
was someone he was hanging out with somebody he was maybe considered a boyfriend? Um,
Could
you
be.
know,
Yeah.
yeah. Like when you're 20, I mean, could have been just starting to see someone and that they're just not a big part of the picture yet, but they're part of the story, right?
Yeah.
At Aries 2, conjunct Venus is a fixed star called Difta. And we've seen this one before. It can be related to self-destruction, disease, disgrace, forced change,
Mm.
but can also indicate secret sexual love affairs.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, I know another one pointing to possible like lover sexual situation.
Yeah. Who is this person?
Yeah. At 9 Aries, conjunct Mercury, it's a fixed star called Algenib, Algenib.
Okay.
And it can indicate mental illness.
Hmm.
Now, that's Mercury rules the second house. So if we're talking about abduction, I mean, it's not a stretch to think that if someone did abduct him or whoever did this may have had some mental instability.
Yeah.
Now, conjunct the sun at 22 Aries is a fixed star called Baton Kados. We've seen this one before.
Hmm.
Suggests forced change, migration, and shipwrecks. So there's that forced change one again, like being moved or yeah, forced out of the location they're in.
Hmm.
And then loosely conjunct Saturn is Algol, the Death Star,
Yeah.
the demon one.
Oof. That's never a good sign.
No, it's definitely not. And that's our perpetrator. So if it was that priest, that's pretty demonic what he was up to.
Yeah.
He said that it was all fantasy, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So now conjunct Jupiter is a fixed star called Aldebaran, and this can signify a violent death and danger. Now conjunct the moon in Sagittarius is a fixed star called Antares. This one can can be good. It can be about open-mindedness, but sometimes there can be destruction, bad luck. And then conjunct Mars is a fixed star called Lasath. Denotes peril, immorality, malevolence, connected with poisons, arguments, and lack of scruples.
Wow.
Yeah,
None of these sound good. None of these sound like there's a happy ending. Like,
definitely not.
he's not alive. He's dead.
Yeah, for
He's
sure. Now we're going to go to the asteroids. Conjunct Uranus is the asteroid maniac.
what? What?
Yeah. Yeah. Conjunct Mars in the fourth house is an asteroid called Andrastea. Uh, this indicates abuse, entrapment, usually in abusive relationships.
Hmm.
And then conjunct Neptune is an asteroid called Penthesia, and this can indicate necrophilia.
Oh, God damn.
I know. And then conjunct Saturn is beer.
Oh, we know her.
We know her. Conjunct Venus, I can't spell Nyctimente. And that just signifies sexual abuse.
Wow.
And then conjunct the sun, Casanova, seduction, manipulation, love related crimes. And
So,
then, oh
yeah.
yeah,
No,
go on.
go ahead. Go ahead.
There's just two more. Conjunct Saturn is the asteroid Gun. So guns involved or some kind of weapon.
Hmm.
And then going back to the 4 days before, when he had the sexual relations with the neighbor and was apparently drugged, there was a full moon in Libra that night, around 10 p.m. And conjunct that full moon in Libra was a fixed star called Foramin. We've seen that one.
Yeah.
Strong desires, tendencies towards excess, and enjoyment of rural activities and magic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from all of this, with all of the asteroids and fixed stars, is that like there is a possibility that I don't know. It just seems to me like I'm just imagining some like ritualistic, drug fueled, like nasty situation where like I I don't know. I think this minister, this Presbyterian minister guy who was like castrating people and then eating their testicles, like he plays into this somehow. I don't know how, but I feel like given the astrology and given the fixed stars and asteroids, and like given the kinds of things that this guy was doing to people, there's a ritualistic aspect to it from the sounds of it. And it also sounds like that's an element of the astrology as well. Um,
Yeah.
that's my take on it.
I think that's a good take. And I would say I think there are two possibilities. I think that either that minister did have something to do with it, or the priest, whatever, had something to do with it.
He was a minister. I checked.
Oh, minister. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I think that the minister had something to do with it, or something related to him being drugged by the neighbor. Maybe not the neighbor, but somebody related to the neighbor,
Hmm.
right? Someone that knew about the situation. Maybe he ended up in another situation similar, only this time he didn't make it out alive.
Hmm.
Because if, because I just wonder, I mean, you live in a small town, you're gay. That's got to be really tough. I can't
Yeah.
imagine, especially in 2001, being open, but he was open, it sounds like, at least to an extent, to his father.
Hmm.
And just think about like your early sexual experiences, how confusing they are. And I'm not saying that he wasn't drugged and he wasn't like coerced and exploited.
Yeah.
But I wonder if maybe he was kind of went along with it, was embarrassed that he did certain things and was afraid that it would get around. And so he decided to say that that it was against his will because he was embarrassed, or, you know, and then that
Yeah.
could have started a whole thing with other people that were aware of it. Maybe someone felt, oh, I can take advantage of him too, or I don't know.
Also, the jumper cable thing is weird. How did the cops not see them at first? Like, were they
Right.
there? What's that all about?
Right. Because it sounds as though they weren't there and then they were.
Right.
But why would anybody return them? Why would someone go out of their way to return them? If they're not there, they're not there. And that's the way it is. So it seems odd that would risk anything by being seen returning them. So I don't know if I feel like I more likely they were always there and they didn't see them for some reason.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that the local police department is not like the most, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not speaking very highly of small little towns. Um, but
Well, it's hard if something bad happens to you in a small town. I mean, you have a small town police department that's going to deal with it, and like, are they good at what they do? Are they going to care? you know?
Yeah.
So,
They also might not have known to look for the jumper cables at first. So maybe they just didn't notice. And then maybe the jumper cables were mentioned and they were like, well, we didn't see them in the garage. Let's go back and see. And then they went back and they were right on the floor. Uh,
right,
and they had always been there, maybe. I don't know.
right. Very strange. I hope they find out,
Yeah.
because one day, because it does sound like this town is good at keeping secrets. And with the moon opposing Jupiter, Jupiter often in forensic astrology can be about a witness. So it could be indicating that there were witnesses. There are people that saw this, saw whatever happened happen.
Interesting. Yeah.
So hopefully one day we'll know.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's interesting and also frustrating with all of these stories that we kind of dive into is like, we haven't had a single story with any real updates, honestly. I keep thinking that we're going to get an update on like the Nancy Guthrie case.
There have
Um,
been some updates, but not enough to do a whole episode on
not
yet.
enough. Well, not even not enough to like, yeah, not enough to do much of anything with, really. I mean, I just am like, I want one of these cases to get cracked open, and I want to see like how I just
I
want to
know.
see like how accurate what we're doing is. And I was hoping that like maybe one of these I mean, whatever. We're like not even a full year into this podcast. So
One day, one of them
maybe I'm
will
just
be
being
open.
maybe I'm
Yeah.
just being impatient. But yeah, I really hope that we can get some clarity on at least one of these cases soon.
I feel like Natalie
Natalie,
Wood, that case might get solved this year because I know that Robert Wagner's astrology isn't looking too hot. So sometime in the fall, he might have a I almost said death cab confession. Remember Taxi Cab Confessions?
I do. I
I
do.
love that show.
All right. Well, if anybody has any information or anything to add to any this story or any of the stories that we have told on this podcast, then you can email us at astrologyunknown@gmail.com. And that we will see you next time around. Stay,
Yeah.
stay safe
Have
out
a
there.
good one, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.